2 months ago, I got a stress fracture and I've not really been able to run since. Obviously that's been devastating, but I've also learned so much from that experience. In this video, I want to talk about injury mitigation, injury prevention, and the mindset that you need to adapt to not only stay motivated while you're injured, but even retain or increase your fitness. If you've just got injured or you're dealing with an injury, then this video is definitely for you. I've got some advice at the end for how you can practically manage your injury, so make sure to stick around for that. First thing I want to say at the top of this video before we get into the details is if you are dealing with an injury, then don't freak out. Don't throw everything out the window. You can manage this and you can stay fit, you can stay sane, you haven't lost your progress, you can still continue to train and be a good athlete and all the rest of it. You don't need to freak out. I'm going to talk about how you do that in this video, but for now, just do what I didn't do and try to stay positive. Try to see everything that's happening as an opportunity to try something new and just focus on the things that you can do. So we'll talk a bit more about all of that in the rest of the video, but for now, let's go downstairs. So what's my story? What happened to me? Basically, I just came off the back of a PR in Leiden Marathon in May, and I felt mint. I felt so good. So I wanted to go into Chicago Marathon, which is my next marathon, even better. So before I started training, I decided I was going to start cutting body fat. Now, I'm already a pretty lean guy, but if you look at me compared to like any of the elites on the field, I'm not. So I wanted to cut body fat down to say 10%, 9%, something like that. To do that, obviously you've got to cut calories, and cutting calories while being in your official training is never recommended, because any calorie deficit, whether it's 100, 200, 300 calories, whatever, is going to impact your performance. In the pre-season, as it's called, before you start official training, that performance isn't really important because you're not actually racing. So the goal was, in the pre-season, before I start training for Chicago, cut calories. Now, to do that, I only had a short window. I had 4 weeks or so before I started officially training. So I took 1 week off after Leiden, where I did nothing, and then I was immediately back on it. My calorie deficit was 500 to 1,000 calories per day. I was immediately back into 50 miles of running with 2 quality sessions in a long run, and one of those quality sessions was particularly intense. I was doing something called power intervals, and the idea is you do 20 times 20 seconds at max effort, and that creates the afterburn effect, which is this phenomenon where after exercise, if you've done something really high intense, like sprints, then you actually burn more calories afterwards as well. So the whole idea around this 50 miles, quality sessions, blah, 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 was to lose weight, was to burn body fat. Basically, that whole setup, the massive calorie deficit, high intensity, high mileage, lack of rest, all of that was a recipe for disaster. We're going to go on a little run walk as part of my recovery, and I'm going to explain exactly why and what I learned from that. So I'm doing a little walk run because I didn't know this, but if you have a stress fracture, you can't just jump right back into things. Your bone isn't used to the stress and the impact, so you've got to gradually ease into things with a walk run, as if you're doing like couch to 5k or something. So I'm doing these 1 mile on, 1 mile off run walk things to ease back into things, because it has been about 10 weeks, 2 months, 10 weeks since I got the stress fracture. So yeah, time to get back into it, hopefully, bit by bit. Anyway, walking around this field because I'm too embarrassed to walk around the streets and film and talk. Running on grass might be better for the bones anyway. Lesson number 1 was around the calorie deficit. So the lesson is, a major calorie deficit is dangerous. According to the legendary physiotherapist Jay Dakari, a calorie deficit as low as 300 calories can have a major impact on your bone health. And I think that was a big factor in my case. So obviously I was having calorie deficits up to 1,000 calories. So naturally my body wasn't getting the fuel that it needed to recover from the workouts that I was doing, which I've already talked about, and my bone health was suffering. So it should come as no surprise that I got a stress fracture, given that the calorie deficits were so high. Realistically, I didn't need more than a 300 calorie deficit. It was hard having that 1,000 calorie deficit. I managed, but it was really unpleasant
300 calories would have been much more sustainable from a lifestyle perspective, from a health perspective, and I could have recovered properly. The second lesson is after any race, but especially after long endurance races like the marathon or ultras or even a half marathon, you need rest. 1 week of rest just is not enough. If you look at any elite, so for example, Safan Hassan after the Paris Olympics, she won gold in the marathon. Incredible race, by the way. She won gold, and then she took, I think, 2 or 3, maybe 4 months off. Have to fact check that. Which, granted, that's more than average. That's certainly a lot, but elites are at least taking 2 weeks, maybe a month off completely from running after a big marathon. Marathons the marathon itself and the training associated with it absolutely batter your body. You're talking hundreds of miles smashing against the pavement, against grass, against whatever. Obviously that's going to have a massive impact on your joints, your ligaments, your bones, your muscles, everything. And if you just go straight back into training off the back of a race, you're not giving your body enough time to recover. It can deal with that sort of pressure and stress for the duration of like a training plan, say 18 weeks, but you need to give it a sufficient amount of time to recover. The third lesson is that the intensity needs to be eased in as well. So I should have took more rest, and I shouldn't have just jumped straight back into 50-mile weeks. But if I was getting back into running, it should have been easy, gentle running. I should not have been jumping straight back in to fucking power intervals 1 week after having just ran a marathon and finishing an 18-week 100-mile plus training plan. It was totally silly. So the lesson there is intensity needs to be gradually reintroduced. If you're going to start running again, fine, but I mean, you should take a bit of rest before you do that. But the intensity itself, you should also ease in. Don't start with intervals straight away. Just build up that aerobic base, build up your fitness, and get your body used to running again, then introduce the intensity later. So like I say, I didn't follow my own advice, and I just kept running with this massive deficit and this 50 miles a week, whatever, and eventually a bit of pain started to show. So what did I do then? Did I go to see physio? Did I get help? Did I stop running immediately? No, I did none of those things. I just kept running and hoping for the best, and hoping that if I just kept running, the pain would go away, and it didn't. It only got worse, in fact. So eventually it got to the point where every single stride on my right side was just pain. Every run was painful, but I was so determined to continue running and stay fit and get the best training in before I start training properly that I just kept on going. Eventually a friend convinced me to go to physio, which I reluctantly did, and that session pretty much reduced me to tears. Now that was partly because the physiotherapist was squeezing my leg like a toothpaste tube, and the pain was 9 out of 10, and he did it like 4 times, which was just absurd. And it was also because I was just devastated. He told me I wouldn't be able to run for 8 to 12 weeks, and if you're running every day like I am, and it's a big part of your life, it's kind of a devastating blow. I didn't really know what was going to happen. Like, was I going to be able to run Chicago at all? How would I train? How would I stay fit? Would I gain weight? There were so many questions swimming around my head, and physiotherapist wasn't the best, didn't really give me any answers, any clear direction about how to recover, nothing. So I was kind of just left in the lurch, and it was devastating. But again, that experience taught me quite a bit about how to actually mitigate an injury when it comes. I did all the wrong things. The reality is, what I learned is that if you have an injury, you need to stop running immediately. Like, just stop running, rest for a couple of days, reassess. If you take a few days off, most people are worried that they're going to lose fitness, that it's going to impact or ruin the training plan. But the reality is that few days off could prevent you from having to take a few months off. And I can assure you from experience that taking a few months off is going to be a lot more detrimental to your fitness than taking a few days off. So I highly recommend that you just stop running immediately, despite what everything in your body is telling you, what everything in your brain is telling you. Just stop running and take some rest. If you're going to rest, you don't need to stop completely. You still have ways to maintain fitness. So let's say you've got an injury that's came up, you've got some shin splints or something, stop running, but just go on the bike instead. Jump in the pool and do some laps. Get on the elliptical, go for walks. There are so many other ways to retain cardiovascular fitness without running. You don't need to down tools and just quit everything. You just need to switch to something that's low impact or that's not going to aggravate your particular injury. And that's what I should have done. Right, so I've just talked all about how you should sort of manage an injury if you get it, as in stop immediately, seek help, cross-train to retain fitness and structure. I did none of those things, pushed through, got an injury, and now it was simply a question of how do I deal with this? And for me, that meant throwing a little paddy. I basically threw everything out the window. My healthy diet went out the window. I started drinking alcohol again. My training plan was basically just like daily spins on some rickety old 1970s bike that didn't even belong to me. And I kept that up for a while, but then I realized, like, you know, nothing's changed. I'm still a runner. Yes, this is a setback, but like it doesn't have to let all the years of training just go out the window. The thing is, like, when you get more into sports, whether it's running or whatever, it becomes part of your identity. And then when you get an injury that means that you can't do the thing, it's like a bit of an existential challenge. Like, you start to question, well, who am I? Blah blah blah. I can't run, so what the hell's the point? And that's certainly how I felt, and I'm sure it's how many people who are injured felt. But the reality is that being an athlete or a runner or whatever you want to call it isn't about preventing or avoiding injury. I mean, certainly that's a challenge, and I just gave some advice how to do that. But no matter how much you put these steps into place, no matter how perfectly your training plan is, human bodies are fallible and an injury is unavoidable. Everyone gets injured, even elites. So it's not a question of avoiding injury or preventing it. It's a question of adapting to it. That's the challenge. That's what defines a good athlete, I suppose. Like, how well can you adapt to the injury that you've been faced with? And I adapted terribly. I got this advice from Ben is Running, and I think it's just absolutely brilliant. So instead of saying, oh, I can't run, I'm so depressed, blah blah blah, focus on the fact that, okay, I've got a stress fracture, I can't do impact sports, but I can do a lot of other things. I can swim, I can cycle, I can use the elliptical, I can strength train, I can do yoga, I can still eat well, I don't need to drink alcohol. There's still so many things that will contribute to your overall training plan that you can still do. And many of them you wouldn't have had time or capacity to do previously. So now it's an opportunity to do those things. In my case, cycling. Hated cycling before this. But then, you know, I've been doing up to 200 miles a week on the bike, and I've actually started to really enjoy it, especially the interval sessions and tempo sessions. And I think that's really nice. I'm actually going to make, as part of, you know, avoiding injury in the future, I'll be making cycling a regular part of my training plan. So that's an opportunity that would never have came about naturally. I would never have choose to introduce cycling. I've been forced into it, but I'm looking at it as an opportunity instead of, you know, a setback. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed this video. Any questions, concerns, doubts, let me know in the comments below. And yeah, if you're injured, get well soon.